Ever since my teen years, I was fascinated by boxing. I grew up watching fights and boxing anime and always wanted to one day become good at boxing myself. Yet strangely, until now, I never trained boxing before. Instead, I started with traditional martial arts, then moved on to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kickboxing, but even though boxing and kickboxing are similar, I soon learned that they are not the same, and my desire to become good at boxing still remained. I'm a big believer that you should pursue your passion, and surprisingly, I ignored this passion of mine for way too long. Life is short and can be even shorter than we think. Who knows, maybe if I won't try out boxing now, later may be too late and I may regret not trying it out for my entire life. So finally, I decided to give it a shot. But the path in front of me was not going to be smooth. Lots of people kept telling me that I lacked the aggression that is necessary for becoming good at boxing, trying to make me believe that no matter what I do, I will never become good at it. But if that is true or not, there was only one way to find out. It was to try boxing out. Before I assessed my current skill level by sparring boxers at the gym I decided to go to, I took a few private lessons, and boy was I thrilled by them. During the private lessons, I learned that the way I was doing striking techniques from how I learned them in kickboxing were lackluster. I was probably so used to using my legs for defending and attacking, and in a way abusing them, that my hand striking ability suffered because of it. Yet here, there was no way around it but to learn to use my hands well. As a result, the boxing coach gave me plenty of great exercises to work on, learning head movement and footwork while using the rope, fixing my strikes with a mitt, and finally hitting the bag and learning how to generate force from the ground up. Only after a few private lessons, I was already feeling so much progress, and so far, I was loving boxing. Yet the question was, how will that progress present itself in my very first boxing sparring? And if I will indeed lack the aggression that so many people were telling me about. So the next time, I joined the sparring day at the gym and had an opportunity to spar with two of my coaches and other fighters. While I did not look like a complete beginner, unfortunately, initially the results were not that great. Other fighters were much better at using pressure against me and kept backing me up by the ropes. I even had to stop a couple of times after receiving liver shots, and even though my sparring wasn't hopeless, I did not feel I was on the same level as the other fighters were. At the end of the sparring, I also asked my coach for his opinion about my sparring skills, and he told me that unfortunately, if this was a boxing fight, I would have been doomed as everyone would have overwhelmed me. This made me stop and wonder that maybe I do indeed miss that aggression that I heard so much about. But that made me wonder, how could I continue from here? I mean, if it's an instinct you either have or not, how the heck would I be able to learn it? But sometimes, life brings you the right people at the right time to help you find your answers. And the person that it brought to me,
WBC heavyweight champion of the world, terrible Tim Witherspoon,
was a 2-time heavyweight world champion of the world and sparring partner to Muhammad Ali, terrible Tim Witherspoon. It happened so that Tim saw the video of my MMA fight.
Keep your right hand against the right side of your face with defense and use that jab.
And after acknowledging that my hand striking was weak, he reached out to me and offered to coach me by giving me feedback on what and how I should work on. Soon enough, Tim and I met for a video call where I showed him the recording of my first boxing sparring, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, see, you jabbing and moving out the way. You gotta jab and stay there. I seen you went like that and then moved out the way. You were worried about getting hit. You jab and stand your ground. Go right back to defense, you can counter. In that last video, I seen you do the same thing. Keep your ground. Do not give up ground.
What I found interesting was that Tim wasn't speaking about aggression. Instead, he spoke about standing your ground, blocking and evading shots while constantly moving forward. This wasn't some gene that you either had or not. These were skills that technically I should be able to learn if I trained them right. That was still a theory to prove, but now I had something to hold on to and test by continuing to train and eventually to spar again to see if I improved. Luckily, Tim was very generous and he sent me a number of videos filmed just from me so I would know how to exactly train and fix the mistakes that he saw. For the next 2 weeks, I became obsessed with learning what Tim told me to work on. I kept focusing on holding my ground and not moving back so much. I practiced defending incoming strikes and worked on my counterattacks. I also did some exhausting strength and conditioning training to boost my stamina, since during the first sparring I gassed out too quickly, and after 2 more weeks of training, finally, it was time to spar again. Little did I know that this time the sparring will be different. While the first boxing sparring I did was light, this time I came into a hard sparring day, where the fighters don't hold back as much. As I entered the gym, I looked at the 2 heavyweight fighters sparring hard in front of me, and I thought, man, if it was me there in front of them, they would knock my head off. But I was not about to back out. Instead, I put on my boxing gloves, and as soon as I was told that I have a sparring partner, I stepped into the ring. To make things even more intense, it turns out that my sparring partner was not a random fighter. He was a 2-time national youth boxing champion and one of the top fighters in the country. My plan was still the same though: stand my ground, defend the shots as best as I can, and to keep moving forward.
A lot of people like to tell me that I lack aggression, and I have to admit, probably right about that. But what's really interesting is that at the very last end of the round, when I was standing my ground against a better fighter, and the coach said 10 seconds left, and the other guy started pounding on me, a huge frustration came out of me, and I just really wanted to get back at him. But then the round ended, I stepped outside of the ring, and I realized that was it. But that's that aggression that everybody keeps talking about. Maybe it's not necessarily a part of like a gene that I have to have. It's a skill that I need to lean forward into.
Even Tim was impressed by my progress.
This is a big change right here. I like this.
And my coach said I did great too. But that was not the end of it all. I still had one more week of training left, ending with another hard sparring day, and without me knowing yet, another big lesson. Receiving so much positive feedback after my first hard sparring, and realizing that I can learn what so many people told me that I was fundamentally missing, I felt uplifted and motivated in my further training. For the next week, I kept coming in to train daily, and I continued to work on the skills that Tim told me to focus on, as he also sent me even more videos to learn from. Finally, the time for my second hard sparring day came. I was told to spar with the youth champ again, and this time I was completely up for it. My plan was to continue to focus on the same strategy and to prove that I have improved. But then... after less than a minute, I was rocked. It turns out that I wasn't the only person practicing for this round, as after our first sparring, the youth champ worked with the coach on the mistakes that he was making the last time, and he capitalized on fixing them this time. For a moment though, I thought, okay, that was just bad luck. And after the youth champ rocked another boxer in less than a minute as well, I raised my hand and asked the coach if I can go with him again. I decided to continue to focus on the same strategy, to keep holding my ground and to fight back whenever I could, giving it my all. But another minute in, I was once again pressed by the ropes and knocked by a liver shot. Sitting there while recovering, I felt frustrated. I thought I became so much better and was ready to prove it again. But then I had to face the reality. After training for only 30 days, there was no way for me to surpass a top fighter, and for a moment the situation felt hopeless. But then I realized that it's not. Getting my ass kicked on my second hard sparring day did not deny my victory over myself from last week. It did not deny the progress and the hard work I've put in so far, and the big lesson I learned, that something that so many people told that I am inherently missing can be actually learned. I realized that a loss does not define me. Not giving up and continuing to train does. So I decided to continue to train in boxing even further, to learn even more, and to eventually become as good as those that I fight against, since there's only so much you can learn and improve in 30 days. But after years of training and not giving up, that's a whole different question. If you want to see how I tried the most extreme martial art in the world, click here. Thanks for watching and keep owning your journey.